Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Fixing Diablo 2. Today we're going to be going over another skill that has a little bit of a problem with it. It's actually a pretty good skill, and, well, it's just kind of a little bit of a lost sheep. It's on the assassin, and man, there's so much lost sheep on the assassin, though, isn't there? I mean, if you take a look at Diablo 2 LOD back before Diablo 2 Resurrected, like the fire tree was basically garbage. The blade fury tree was basically garbage, with the exception of blade fury alone, and everything else just kind of sucked. On top of that, like everybody used Death Sentry because it was like the main thing, and it also had synergies with all the other lightning skills. Quite a few of the entire left side of the martial arts tree was basically garbage and nobody touched it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another one of the abilities on the assassin, which needs a little bit of love, is the Cloak of Shadows. Cloak of Shadows is an ability that does some pretty amazing stuff. It, number one, blinds all monsters within radius. So this is really, really cool. If you are in any area of any particular, meaningfulness, and you're running along and say you find yourself in danger, you can very easily just Cloak of Shadows and everything is nice and blinded. Now, the main issue with Cloak of Shadows actually revolves around being punished for putting points into the skill. And this is an issue. So first, let's cover what Cloak of Shadows actually does, and then we're going to talk about why putting points into the skill actually makes it worse, not better, despite the fact that it also makes it better, not worse, and it's some sort of weird contradiction. So, first off, Cloak of Shadows will blind all monsters nearby. Very, very useful. However, it only blinds the monsters that are nearby, not any other monster that is outside of the range of the ability. It gives you a bonus to your defense while it's active. So when you have Cloak of Shadows active, you do get a bonus to defense. Now, I would like to see that bonus defense increased, mainly because the assassin just has no other way to increase her defense. And more often than not, I think you will find that the assassin just has absolutely dog water garbage defense. And even with the bonus that Cloak of Shadows offers, it's still relatively low. So increasing that bonus defense wouldn't exactly hurt anything. On top of that, it also gives a negative enemy defense to the monster. Now, this negative enemy defense to the monster actually does scale. So if we go ahead and reset our points here real quick, you'll notice that at level 1, basically, or rather level 10, we have a 37% defense. We have negative 42% enemy defense, and it's mana cost 13, right? So it continually rises. I've got trap skillers. Let me see if I can pull these trap skillers out real quick so I can give you an idea of what the level 1 skill does. Because it's very important to see the difference between the level 1 skill and the higher versions. So put these in here real quick, and we also have a Sojourn, and a Bowl Kathos, and a Mars. Alright, so now we are at level 1, and at level 1 we are looking at 8-second duration, as well as a negative 15% enemy defense, plus 10% to my defense, and it also still blinds all the enemies around me. Now, why would the low-level ability be better than the high-level ability? Well, what it comes down to is that when you're blinding monsters, you kind of want all of them blinded. You don't want some of them blinded. You want all of them blinded. And so if you're running through an area and you use Cloak of Shadows, of course I didn't put any points into Vitality. That would definitely be an issue. Poor girl. You know, when you don't have any Vitality points, you don't have any HP. Did you guys know that? I did reset the character after all. So when you use Cloak of Shadows and you blind a bunch of monsters, those monsters can't find you, right? So you can utilize this to your advantage, like for instance in recovering your corpse, which I can't even equip half the stuff on my corpse because I don't have any stat points. But you want to be able to blind everything. Well, the main issue with Cloak of Shadows is that the duration also prevents recast. And this means that when you level up the ability to get the higher effects, you cannot cast the ability again until the original ability depletes itself. So at level 1, it only takes 8 seconds, right? So it's an 8-second duration, which means that you can recast it once every 8 seconds. However, when you level it up, Level 2, it goes up to 9 seconds. 3 is 10 seconds, and so forth and so on. By the time you get to level 10, you're talking about 17 seconds, which is an eternity inside of combat. Because if you're trying to blind monsters, you are better off, honestly, utilizing the shorter duration version. But the shorter duration version has absolutely terrible, you know, reduction. It has no enemy defense reduction. It has basically no defense increase. So it's kind of useless, right? So you're basically punished for putting points into the ability, because the more points you put into the ability, the longer the duration is. As you can see now, it's at 27%. And as you continue to add more and more pieces of equipment to your character, and let's go ahead and grab some strength so we can actually equip our gear. When you add more and more pieces of equipment to your character, you are, in effect, creating even more of an issue. So now you have 34 seconds on that. And then you can add even more to that. So as you continually add more and more plus to skills. Those are trap skillers. That's not even what I was looking at. We need other skillers. Shadow disciplines. I don't have shadow disciplines on me. But as you can see now, we're at 29 seconds, and at 29 seconds, or level 29, we're at 36 seconds. And it just continually increases and increases and increases. This means that we can only cast Cloak of Shadows once every 36 seconds, which makes it very, 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 very useless in most scenarios, because you're going to be able to run into combat, blind one set of monsters, and then as you find more monsters that have not been blinded, you're not going to be able to blind the next pack for 37 seconds, basically. So at the 37-second mark, you'll be able to reuse the ability. So you use it once to actually blind some monsters, and then the next pack of monsters that you come to, you can't actually blind them because you can't use the ability. You're basically being punished for leveling up the ability. So what I propose is essentially two things. Number one, the ability needs to have its duration decreased, not increased. I can understand why specifically they want this ability to have a duration, because obviously if you can spam it, then you can just have permanent negative 95% enemy defense, which I'm not even really sure, to be perfectly honest, I'm not even really sure if that's a bad thing. Conviction also gives negative 95% enemy defense, and Conviction is also something that you can keep up on a monster 100% of the time, right? So it's not like being able to spam it would be terrible. Let's talk about it real quick from a more abject point of view. So Cloak of Shadows has pros. It's incredibly useful because it can blind enemies. It lowers the defense of enemies by up to negative 95%, which is actually halved versus bosses, but still actually does take effect. So versus bosses, that is divided by 2. And it raises the defense of the user by 100% if you have a high level, which this could be buffed, in my opinion, with absolutely no issue. The cons of this is that increasing the level increases the duration, which negatively affects the ability to blind monsters and gain the positive bonuses. It basically makes it so that being able to utilize it is kind of like a curse, right? So you can use it once and then you're stuck and you really can't use it again for quite some time. So you're better off leaving it at a lower level to get the quicker ability to blind monsters, but then at the same time, now you're getting crappy bonuses like really low negative monster defense, really low bonuses to your defense, and so forth and so on. It does overwrite friendly curses. So part of this is actually a curse. You can actually physically see the curse above the monster's head. So when you go into an area and you right-click, you actually see the curse over top of their head. It does not blind elites, but you can notice that the curse still works on elites. So at the very least, we are still looking at a situation where it does have some effectiveness versus elite monsters. On top of this, you feel like you're being punished for investing in the skill, which is, I think, the biggest issue with this is that you should not feel like you are being punished for investing into the skill. So if I want to put 20 points into Cloak of Shadows, or however many points that I want to put into Cloak of Shadows, I shouldn't feel like it's a bad thing for me to do that. So there's basically two possible solutions to this, which is number one, cap the maximum duration. at 8 seconds, which is the level 1 duration. So if you cap the maximum duration at 8 seconds, yes, it would require you to cast it more often. But at least you would be able to get the 94% defense and the 95% negative defense more consistently on more monsters, and it would be more useful as a whole, just simply with the ability to spam cast it. Because, well, I wouldn't exactly call 8 seconds spam casting, but I mean, yeah. Another possible solution for this is just allow people to spam cast it. I'm not exactly 100% sure that I feel like the ability to spam cast this would necessarily be a bad thing from the negative enemy defense department. However, the blinding effect, again, not really a bad thing because it doesn't really matter. Let me give some examples. So, Cloak of Shadows blinds monsters, right? So we're gonna draw some analogs here, and we're gonna talk about why it's probably not a bad idea that you'd be able to spam cast this. So number one, conviction. Conviction is the easiest analog to the negative enemy defense because conviction also applies negative 95% enemy defense. This means that you get the same bonus, right, permanently. So this is a permanent debuff as long as you are within range of the monster, right? So permanent. Conviction is a very good example of why having the Cloak of Shadows active permanently isn't actually a bad thing, because it's basically the same thing that Conviction is giving. Conviction also gives a lot more. It gives negative resistances, obviously, which is even more ridiculous, and Conviction is just an extremely powerful curse. Number two is dim vision. So dim vision is a blind that can be spammed. So this is a blind that can be spammed. You can spam it as many times as you want to. You can spam it better than Cloak of Shadows. Cloak of Shadows is a 20-yard radius around you in a circle. It is not necessarily a castable ability like Dim Vision is. Dim Vision can be cast anywhere I want on any corner of the screen. It has a huge radius. If I remember correctly, Dim Vision's radius goes up tremendously. Let's pull up Dim Vision real quick as an example. Dim Vision is duration 7 seconds, 9 seconds, etc., etc., etc. And as you can see, like upwards into like level 25 and stuff like that, it does go up to 18.6 yards. So it has a pretty crazy radius eventually, and it has a really long duration. Now, because it is a curse that actually messes with the like the AI of the monster, it actually does get a reduction in hell difficulty, if I remember correctly. But even with the reduction, it still lasts for at least like 8 seconds on most monsters, with a relatively decent level. Like at level 10, it's 25 seconds, and even if you divide that by 1/3, it's still going to last at least 8 seconds. So in general, we have two examples already of two skills that provide the same thing that Cloak of Shadows is providing, and both of them are spammable within the game, and neither one of them literally breaks the game. Dim Vision doesn't break the game. It's a very utilitarian curse. It's useful, but it's not like so useful that it's absolutely ridiculous. Conviction is very useful as well, but Conviction also has its downsides, like it's not really good for a hammered in. It does have a delay on actually being applied to the monster. And there's some other issues with Conviction, like it's not fanaticism. It doesn't give you increased attack speed, and you're basically giving up things for it, right? Dim Vision also, similarly, you're giving up amplify damage or decrepify for it. Now, the bonus defense is so low that it could be compared to just about anything. But quite honestly, the Assassin is a character that has basically no way to increase defense. She doesn't have Holy Shield. She doesn't have Defiance. She doesn't have Iron Skin. She doesn't have Shouts unless she's using a CTA. And I mean, in general, when it comes to this particular character, actually, Shout isn't even on CTA, is it? It's battle orders and battle command. There's really not a lot of good ways to increase defense on an assassin. Even if you are utilizing decent equipment and you have a decent amount of damage reduction, defense, from various sources. I'm trying to see if I actually have. Let's put a string of ears on here, and then she needs boots. As you can see, she only has about 1,379 defense. The defense bonus that you gain from utilizing this ability is not enough to even really be talked about. It's an addition to the skill that doesn't really do anything in the grand scheme of things, because the assassin already is not reaching a good enough defensive value to actually be of use. And what I mean by this is that, as you can see, I'm currently at 44% chance to be hit by a Bloodhawk with the Cloak of Shadows. If I didn't have Cloak of Shadows up, I would be looking at probably like a freaking, I don't know, even more, like a 60% chance or something. The amount of 57% chance. There you go. So the amount of defense that I'm actually getting from this is negligible at best, even when it's maxed out. I mean, they could double the amount of defense that it gives, and it still wouldn't really be all that important for the assassin. It's mildly helpful at best. Overall, I just think that this skill could use a little bit of love, and what I mean by a little bit of love is it just needs to not be punishing to put points into the ability. I think that's the most important thing, is if they can set it up so that it's really the only thing that you really need to think about when you come to this ability is I don't want to be punished for investing in the skill, right? So this is the most important thing, and the only thing you need to take away from this. They need to set it up so that Cloak of Shadows does not punish you for investing in the skill. I would say either A, capping the duration, or B, allowing you to spam it. I don't believe that you should leave it at 36 seconds if you want to, if they set it up for spamming. I think it should be set up like most curses, and in most curses, the duration increases with level rather dramatically, right? So it starts out at a really low duration and then increases. If they let you spam it, then it'd be fine if it was 36 seconds, like as it is right now. But you wouldn't want it to be 36 seconds and spammable. What you want is like, if they set it up so that you can spam it, I would just leave it at 8 seconds. 8 seconds is the base time for Cloak of Shadows, so at level 1 skill. And that's probably the best way to set it up. Just let people either spam it at 8 seconds, or cap it at 8 seconds so that it can be spammed relatively quickly by comparison to 36 seconds. And to give you an example of what I mean by relatively quickly in comparison, right now it's 36 seconds. You divide that by 8, and you get a total of 4.5 times faster. So if they cap it at 8 seconds, I will be able to use Cloak of Shadows 4.5 times faster than what I'm currently capable of using it at its maximum. And that pretty much covers it. That's it. Like, fix the skill by fixing the duration, and allow people to actually invest points into it and not get punished for it. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about something as simple as the Cloak of Shadows skill. And I just realized my camera's going crazy. Why is my camera going crazy? I mean, it doesn't really matter now. It's the end of the video, right? I guess the sun came up while I was talking. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and